Raila Odinga, a towering figure in Kenyan politics and one of Africa's most enduring voices for democracy, has died at the age of 80 after suffering a heart attack during a morning walk. His passing marks the end of an era in Kenya's political landscape, a life defined by struggle, resilience, and an unshakable commitment to the ideals of justice and equality. For more than 4 decades, Odinga stood as both a symbol of hope and a reminder of the sacrifices required to shape a true democracy. His story is one of endurance through pain, of defiance against oppression, and of the enduring spirit of a man who believed that the destiny of his nation was worth every ounce of his strength. Born on January 7, 1945 in Maseno, a small town in western Kenya, Raila Amolo Odinga was the son of Oginga Odinga, Kenya's first vice president. His father was one of the prominent voices in the country's early independence struggle, and later became a fierce critic of one-party rule under President Jomo Kenyatta. Growing up in such a politically charged household, Raila was exposed to both the privileges and the dangers of political life from an early age. He witnessed his father's fall from grace, the harassment of dissenting voices, and the persecution that came with standing against entrenched power. Those early years shaped his resolve and deepened his conviction that Kenya's democracy had to be fought for, not handed down. Educated first in Kenya and later in East Germany, Odinga's worldview expanded beyond the boundaries of his homeland. While studying mechanical engineering at the Technical University of Magdeburg, he became fascinated by political ideology, economic systems, and the tension between socialism and capitalism that was defining the global order at the time. His exposure to socialist Europe sharpened his understanding of state responsibility, collective welfare, and governance. Yet he remained pragmatic, believing that democracy, not ideology, was the true path to progress for Kenya. When he returned to Kenya in the early 1970s, he was a man equipped with both technical skill and a burning sense of duty to improve his country's governance and social structure. His career, however, was soon to be overshadowed by Kenya's volatile political climate. The country was under the iron grip of President Daniel Arap Moi, who had consolidated power after Jomo Kenyatta's death in 1978. Moi's regime was notorious for silencing dissent, suppressing free speech, and using state security forces to maintain control. Odinga's growing voice for political reform and democracy quickly made him a target. In 1982, following a failed coup attempt by a faction of the Kenyan Air Force, Odinga was accused of involvement in the plot, a charge he always denied. He was arrested, imprisoned, and subjected to years of brutal treatment, including long periods in solitary confinement. Those years behind bars would test the limits of any man's spirit. For Odinga, prison became both a crucible and a classroom. He later spoke of the endless silence of solitary confinement, where days blended into nights, and hope was something one had to create from memory. Yet he refused to break. Fellow inmates described him as unyielding, always urging others to hold on, to believe that Kenya would one day be free from tyranny. To his captors, he was a troublemaker. To his supporters, he became a symbol of courage and endurance. His imprisonment cemented his reputation as a freedom fighter, and when he was finally released, he emerged not weakened, but sharper, more resolute, and more determined than ever to push for democratic reform. In 1992, Kenya held its first multi-party elections after years of domestic and international pressure. Odinga, riding on his reputation as a reformist and freedom fighter, was elected as a member of parliament. It was the beginning of a new chapter in his political journey, a period where he would move from being an opposition figure to one of the most influential politicians in Kenya's history. For the next 2 decades, he would serve in various cabinet positions and play a key role in shaping Kenya's political and economic policies. His influence grew not just through his oratory or charisma, but through his vision of a more inclusive Kenya, one where political power was not monopolized by a few elites, but shared among all communities. However, Odinga's path to leadership was never straightforward. His political career was a blend of triumphs and heartbreaks. He ran for president 5 times, each time coming close yet falling short. His first major presidential run came in 1997, where despite massive grassroots support, he lost to Moi. In 2002, he threw his weight behind Mwai Kibaki under the National Rainbow Coalition, helping to unseat Moi's chosen successor. That victory was a moment of national renewal, and Odinga's role in it elevated him as a statesman. Yet just a few years later, tensions between him and Kibaki erupted into one of Kenya's darkest chapters. The 2007 election became a turning point not only for Odinga's political legacy, but for the entire nation. When the Electoral Commission declared Kibaki the winner under suspicious circumstances, Odinga and his supporters rejected the results, claiming the election had been stolen. What followed was chaos, protests that spiraled into ethnic violence, communities turning on one another, and a country teetering on the brink of civil war. More than 1,000 people were killed and hundreds of thousands displaced. Odinga, shaken by the destruction, called for calm but remained firm in his demand for justice and electoral reform. The ensuing international mediation led to a historic power-sharing agreement, with Odinga becoming Kenya's second prime minister in 2008. As prime minister, Odinga worked tirelessly to rebuild trust between communities and strengthen the country's institutions. He was instrumental in overseeing the drafting and adoption of the 2010 Constitution, a landmark achievement that redefined Kenya's governance structure, devolved power to local governments, and enshrined fundamental rights. The new constitution was a major victory for Odinga and his supporters. It was proof that his decades-long struggle for democracy had not been in vain. Yet, despite these achievements, his presidential ambitions remained unfulfilled. In 2013, he lost to Uhuru Kenyatta. In 2017, history repeated itself amid allegations of electoral fraud. His supporters filled the streets once again, demanding justice. The 2017 election, annulled by Kenya's Supreme Court due to irregularities, the first such ruling in Africa's history, was both a vindication of Odinga's persistence and a testament to his influence. Still, when the repeat election was held, Odinga boycotted, citing lack of reforms. The tension that followed threatened to plunge the nation into another round of turmoil. Then, in 2018, in a surprising move that stunned both his critics and allies, Odinga shook hands with Uhuru Kenyatta in what became known simply as the handshake. That handshake symbolized more than political reconciliation. It represented the maturity of two men who had been fierce rivals, deciding to prioritize Kenya's unity over personal ambition. Many interpreted it as Odinga's recognition that peace, even imperfect peace, was more valuable than endless political battles. Kenyatta later reflected, "That journey from fierce political opponents to partners in the pursuit of handshake unity taught me the true measure of the man. I saw firsthand his unwavering passion for this country, his deep-seated belief in justice." For Odinga, the handshake was not surrender, it was evolution. He had fought for decades for a democratic space where dialogue could triumph over violence. The handshake gave birth to the Building Bridges Initiative, BBI, an ambitious plan to heal ethnic divisions, promote inclusivity, and reform Kenya's political structure once more. Although the BBI faced legal and political challenges and was ultimately halted by the courts, it underscored Odinga's lifelong commitment to a Kenya united by shared destiny, not divided by ethnicity or power. Outside politics, Odinga was a husband, father, and grandfather, a family man whose private life was often overshadowed by his public battles. His wife, Ida Odinga, stood by him through imprisonment, political turmoil, and public scrutiny. She once described their life together as a journey of faith and endurance, marked by separation, uncertainty, and resilience. When he was imprisoned in the 1980s, she was left to raise their children under constant surveillance, facing harassment and isolation. Yet she became a pillar of strength not only to her family, but to countless women across Kenya, who saw in her the embodiment of grace under pressure. Their marriage endured the storms of politics and time, a quiet testament to loyalty in the face of adversity.